The Great Hall on Centauri Prime was full of strange creatures from across the galaxy. Some looked like giant insects. Others had multiple arms or eyes that glowed in the dark. They all sat in rows of crystal chairs that went up to the ceiling. At the center of this massive room stood Captain Jake Morrison, a human man with short brown hair and tired eyes. Jake wore his best military uniform, but it had burn marks and small holes from recent battles. Behind him, a huge screen showed pictures that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Cities on fire, bodies in the streets, children who would never play again. "You have 72 hours, Jake said, his voice echoing in the silent hall. "Pull back all your ships from human space. Give us the ones who killed innocent people on New Haven. If you don't, you will face what comes next." The alien creatures started making angry sounds. Some buzzed like angry bees, others roared like wild animals. A massive bug-like creature with sharp teeth stood up from the highest chair. This was High Counselor Vrexthol, the most powerful being in the galaxy. "Your people control only 12 star systems, human." Vrexthol clicked his mouth parts together. "We rule over 1,000 worlds. Your threats mean nothing to us." Jake's hands turned into fists as he thought about what he had seen on New Haven. The playground where children used to laugh was now a crater. The hospital where doctors saved lives was melted metal. His own nephew had been visiting that world when the attack came. "We gave you everything," Jake said, his voice getting louder. "We shared our technology with you. We tried to be friends. We trusted you." He looked around the room at all the alien faces. "You paid us back by killing our children." A tall, blue-skinned woman next to Jake stepped forward. This was Chief Military Advisor Zara Collins. She had been Jake's friend since they were both young soldiers. "Captain Morrison speaks the truth," she said. "We came to you in peace 15 years ago. We followed your laws. We paid your taxes. We helped you fight your wars, and for what?" Jake continued. "So you could test your new weapons on our families? So you could see how much pain humans could take before we broke?" The aliens in the room shifted uncomfortably. Many of them remembered when humans first arrived in their space. The humans had seemed so eager to please, so willing to learn. They gave away secrets about their technology and shared maps of their worlds. Some aliens had thought humans were too trusting to survive in the galaxy. "The attack on New Haven was not authorized by this council," said another alien with 6 arms and silver skin. "The hegemony forces acted without orders." Jake laughed, but there was no happiness in the sound. "Without orders? Your ships surrounded the planet for 3 days before they opened fire. Your news broadcasts called it a military exercise. Children watched your ships in the sky and thought it was a parade." He pulled out a small device and pressed a button. The screen behind him changed to show a recording. It was from a security camera on New Haven. Children were pointing at the sky and waving at the alien ships. Their parents were taking pictures. Everyone looked happy and excited. Then the screen went white as the first plasma blast hit the city. "Those children trusted you," Jake said quietly. They waved at the ships that were about to kill them. The room became very quiet. Even the aliens who had been making noise stopped to listen. 72 hours, Jake repeated. "That's more time than you gave the people on New Haven. That's more mercy than you showed to families who were sleeping in their beds when your weapons turned them to ash." High Counselor Vrex. Thol made a sound like breaking glass. "You forget your place, human. We could destroy your entire species with a single fleet. Your homeworld is not protected by anything we cannot break." Jake smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. "You think we're still the same trusting people who came to you 15 years ago? You think we learned nothing from watching how you treat the weak?" Zara touched Jake's arm gently. It was time to go. They had delivered their message. 72 hours, Jake said one more time. He turned and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the huge room. Zara and the other humans followed him. As they reached the door, Jake stopped and looked back at the aliens. "You should know something about humans," he said. "We remember everything. Every kindness and every cruelty. Every friend and every enemy. We remember it all." The doors closed behind the humans with a sound like thunder. After they left, the aliens began talking all at once. Some said humans were too weak to be a real threat. Others remembered stories about human wars on their home planet, where they fought each other with terrible weapons. "What do you think they meant?" asked the 6-armed alien. Brexthel made a dismissive sound. "Humans are emotional creatures. They make threats when they are hurt, like children having a tantrum. By tomorrow they will come back and ask for mercy." But deep inside his mind, Brexthel felt something he had not experienced in many years. It was a feeling he remembered from when he was young and weak, before he became powerful. It took him a moment to recognize what it was. Fear. Meanwhile, Jake and his team walked through the crystal corridors of the council building toward their ship. Other aliens stepped aside as they passed, some watching with curiosity, others with contempt. "Sir," Zara whispered, "do you think they'll actually surrender the ones responsible?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. "No," he finally said. "They think we're still the same species that begged for scraps at their table. They think we're still afraid of them. Are we going to show them how wrong they are?" Jake stopped walking and looked out through a transparent wall at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting. Home was waiting. And on Earth, things were happening that the Galactic Council could not imagine. "Zara," he said softly, "they have no idea what's coming. For 15 years, they thought they were teaching us how to be civilized. They never realized we were learning how to be dangerous." As their ship lifted off from Zentari Prime, Jake sent a coded message back to Earth. It was only 3 words long, but it would change everything. The die is cast. Deep under the hot sand of the Mojave Desert, Admiral Lisa Hart stepped into an elevator that most people on Earth didn't know existed. The metal doors closed behind her with a soft hiss, and the elevator began to drop down into the ground. It went down for a very long time, past layers of rock and steel and security systems that could stop an army. Lisa watched the numbers on the wall change as they went deeper. 1 kilometer down, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers into the Earth itself. Finally, after what felt like forever, the elevator stopped and the doors opened. What Lisa saw on the other side took her breath away, even though she had been here many times before. The cavern was huge, bigger than several football stadiums put together. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into darkness above bright lights. And filling every inch of space were ships. But these were not the ships that the Galactic Council knew about. These were sleek and black, shaped like knives cutting through the air. They seemed to drink up light instead of reflecting it, making them look like holes in space itself. "Dr. Kane," Lisa called out as she walked into the main control room. "Give me a report on everything." Dr. Richard Kane looked up from a computer that hummed with power. He was a thin man with gray hair and glasses that reflected the glow from dozens of screens around him. He had not slept much in the past few days, and it showed in his tired eyes. "All systems are working perfectly, Admiral," Richard said. "The Shadow Fleet is ready to go. 200 ships, each one carrying technology that makes our regular military look like children playing with toys." Lisa studied the giant screens that showed detailed pictures of the ships. These vessels could fold space and time, allowing them to travel distances in minutes that should take months. Their weapons could crack open moons. Their shields could bend reality itself to protect them from harm. "How long have we been building this?" Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer. "Since the day we first met aliens," Richard replied. "Since the moment we realized that the universe was not the friendly place we hoped it would be." He touched his computer and brought up files marked with the highest security levels. "President Martinez gave the order after the Proxima incident 15 years ago. We've been taking apart alien technology, studying how it works, and building better versions ever since. The Proxima incident was something most humans had forgotten, but the military remembered everything. A human research station had been destroyed by unknown aliens. The official story was that it was an accident, a reactor explosion. The truth was that it had been a test to see how humans would respond to an attack." Commander Tony Blake walked over to join the conversation. He was a big man with steady hands and sharp eyes, the kind of person you wanted flying your ship when everything went wrong. "Admiral, the crews are ready. Every pilot, every gunner, every engineer knows someone who died on New Haven. They're not just fighting for their country or their planet. They're fighting for revenge." Lisa nodded slowly. She understood that feeling. Her own sister had been on New Haven, working as a teacher at a school for children from different worlds. The school was gone now, along with everyone in it. "Dr. Kane, explain to me how these ships work," Lisa said. "I need to understand what we're about to unleash." Richard's fingers moved over his keyboard, and the screens around them came alive with technical drawings and equations that would make alien scientists weep with jealousy. "The quantum consciousness interface allows the ship to respond to the pilot's thoughts," he explained. Instead of pushing buttons and pulling levers, the pilot thinks about what they want the ship to do, and it happens instantly. Reaction time goes from seconds to microseconds. The fold drives create tears in space-time itself, Tony added. We can appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. No alien sensors can detect us until we choose to be seen. And the weapons? Lisa asked. Richard smiled for the first time in days, but it was not a happy smile. Quantum torpedoes that phase through shields as if they aren't there. Energy cannons that channel the power of miniature stars. Gravity bombs that can turn a planet's own weight against it. Lisa walked over to a window that looked out into the main hangar. Hundreds of pilots and crew members were checking their ships, running final tests, saying goodbye to loved ones through video calls. These people had volunteered for a mission that might not bring them home. Sir, Tony said quietly, there's something else. Something the aliens don't know about our species. What's that? They think that because we're young compared to them, we're simple. They think our technology is primitive and our thinking is basic. Tony looked out at the ships with pride in his eyes. They don't understand that being young means we don't have old ideas holding us back. We can think of solutions they would never consider because they've been doing things the same way for millions of years. Lisa understood what he meant. The aliens had rules about how space battles should be fought, agreements about which weapons were acceptable, traditions about giving enemies time to surrender. Humans had no such traditions with aliens. They would fight to win, using every advantage they could find. There's something else, Richard said, pulling up another file on his computer. The infiltration program. Lisa raised her eyebrows. Even she didn't know all the details about that operation. For the past 15 years, while the aliens thought we were just learning to be part of their galactic community, we were studying them. Human volunteers underwent genetic modification to look like different alien species. They learned to think like aliens, act like aliens, even smell like aliens. The implications hit Lisa like a physical blow. How many? Thousands. They're in alien governments, alien militaries, alien intelligence agencies. Some of them have been deep undercover for over a decade. The aliens have been making plans and thinking they were secret, but we've known about everything from the beginning. Tony whistled softly. No wonder Command was so confident about the timeline. The Galactic Council thinks they're fighting a young, inexperienced species that just learned about space travel. Richard continued. They have no idea they're fighting an enemy that has been studying them, learning from them, and preparing for this day since the moment we met. Lisa thought about Jake Morrison delivering his ultimatum to the Council. At that very moment, the aliens were probably laughing about human arrogance, making jokes about the foolish young species that dared to threaten their betters. How many of them know what's coming? She asked. None of them, Richard replied. As far as they're concerned, humanity has 12 star systems, a few hundred outdated ships, and delusions of grandeur. They think our most advanced technology is plasma rifles and chemical rockets. Admiral, Tony said, we're receiving the coded message from Captain Morrison. It's time. Lisa took a deep breath and looked around the command center. In a few hours, everything would change. The balance of power in the galaxy would shift in ways the aliens could not imagine. Species that had ruled for millions of years would learn what it meant to be afraid. Activate the fleet, she ordered. Send word to all infiltration teams to prepare for the operation. And open a channel to Earth Command. The room filled with activity as technicians carried out her orders. Screens came alive with status reports, communication channels opened, and deep in the hangar, the Shadow Fleet began to wake up. Sir? Tony asked. What do we tell the crews? Lisa thought about the children on New Haven, about her sister's school, about all the humans who had died because aliens thought they were too weak to matter. Tell them it's time to show the galaxy what happens when you make humans angry, she said. Tell them it's time to teach the universe that Earth's children have grown up and we don't forgive those who hurt our family. The 72 hours passed like a slow, painful dream for the Galactic Council. On Zentari Prime, High Counselor Vrexthul sat in his private chambers reading reports from across the galaxy. Everything seemed normal. Human ships stayed in human space. Human diplomats sent no new messages. It was as if the entire species had simply given up. Perhaps they finally understand their place, Vrexthul said to his aide, a smaller insect creature with quick, nervous movements. Humans are emotional, but they are not stupid. They know they cannot win a war against us. But in the deep space around Karthak, the strongest military world of the hegemony, something impossible was happening. Space itself began to twist and bend in ways that hurt to look at. The stars seemed to shift position, and gravity readings on the planet's sensors went completely crazy. Captain Linda Price stood on the bridge of the battleship Retribution, watching the quantum displays show their position. Around her ship, 199 other vessels of the Shadow Fleet hung in space like deadly shadows. They had traveled 300 light-years in less than an hour, using fold drives that tore holes in reality itself. "All ships, this is Retribution Actual," Linda spoke into her headset. Her voice was calm and steady, but inside she felt the fire of righteous anger. "You all know why we're here. Remember New Haven. Remember our families. Remember our children. Show them what Earth's wrath looks like." The bridge crew around Linda worked at their stations with deadly efficiency. These were not the same humans who had begged for acceptance from the Galactic Council 15 years ago. These were warriors who had spent years preparing for this moment. "Quantum torpedo tubes loaded and ready," reported Weapons Officer Ben Carter, a young man whose parents had died in the New Haven attack. "Shields are active and holding steady," called out Nancy Williams from the engineering station. "All systems are running at maximum efficiency." "Enemy targets acquired," announced Tactical Officer Joe Anderson. "Orbital defense platforms, military bases, and the Hegemony fleet are all within range." Linda looked at the main screen, which showed Karthak floating in space like a brown and green jewel. This world had been the source of so much pain for younger species across the galaxy. The Hegemony used it as a training ground for their military, a place where they taught their soldiers that might made right. "Fire," Linda said simply. What happened next would be talked about in alien military academies for centuries to come, assuming any of those academies survived what was about to unfold across the galaxy. The quantum torpedoes phased through Karthak's defensive shields, as if they weren't there. The aliens had built those shields to stop every known type of weapon in the galaxy, but human weapons didn't follow alien rules. They existed in multiple dimensions at once, allowing them to slip through barriers that should have been impossible to cross. The orbital defense platforms that had protected Karthak for 300 years exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Each platform had enough firepower to destroy a fleet of conventional ships, but they were useless against enemies they couldn't hit. On the surface of Karthak, General Zurvak of the Hegemony watched his tactical displays with growing horror. Red warning lights flashed across every screen in his command center. His aide, a nervous young officer with shaking hands, read reports that made no sense. "Sir, the orbital platforms are gone. All of them. How many enemy ships?" Zurvak demanded. We can't tell, sir. Our sensors detect gravitational distortions, but we can't see the ships themselves. It's like fighting ghosts." Zurvak had fought in 47 battles across his long career. He had seen every type of weapon and every kind of ship the galaxy had to offer, but he had never seen anything like this. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human fleet. Put it on screen." The display flickered and showed the bridge of a human ship. A woman in a crisp military uniform looked directly at Zurvak. Her eyes were cold as space itself, but her voice was calm and professional. "General Zurvak of the Hegemony Forces. I am Captain Linda Price of the Earth vessel Retribution. You have 1 hour to evacuate all military personnel from your bases and surrender. This is your only warning." Zurvak's mandibles clicked together in anger. "You dare make demands of me, human? I have been fighting wars since before your species left their home planet." Linda's expression didn't change. "General, you participated in the massacre on New Haven. You gave the order to target civilian areas. Children died because of your decisions. War requires hard choices," Zurvak replied. "The weak must learn to fear the strong." "You're right," Linda said, and for a moment Zurvak thought he had won the argument. "War does require hard choices. Here's mine." The transmission ended and a new kind of hell began. The Retribution descended through Karthak's atmosphere like a black dagger cutting through clouds. Behind it came 20 other ships, each one bristling with weapons that glowed with barely contained energy. But instead of firing on the cities below, they broadcast a message on every communication channel on the planet. Captain Steve Rogers, commander of the assault ship Vengeance, spoke to the entire population of Karthak. "Citizens of this world, your military leaders chose to murder innocent people. We are not here for you. Evacuate all military installations immediately. You have 1 hour. This is not a threat. This is mercy." The message repeated in 14 different languages. making sure that every person on the planet understood what was happening. In the capital city of Karthak, millions of civilians looked up at the sky and saw something that filled them with terror. Human ships floated above their heads like dark angels of judgment. The ships were beautiful in a deadly way, their hulls seeming to absorb light and hope in equal measure. But something strange happened. The humans kept their word. Exactly 1 hour after the warning, the bombardment began, but it targeted only military installations. Barracks, weapons factories, and command centers disappeared in flashes of energy that left nothing behind but small craters. Hospitals, schools, and civilian homes remained untouched. Zervok watched from his bunker as his entire military force was systematically destroyed. "How are they doing this?" he asked his aide. "How can they target our facilities with such precision?" The aide looked at his scanner with wide, frightened eyes. "Sir, they're not using sensors to target us. They already know where everything is. It's like they have maps of our entire planet." The truth was worse than Zervok could imagine. For 10 years, a human agent named Carol Davis had worked as a cleaning person in his headquarters. She had access to every room, every computer, every secret document. She had mapped every inch of the base, photographed every plan, and transmitted it all back to Earth. Carol was one of hundreds of human agents who had spent years preparing for this day. They had learned alien languages, studied alien cultures, and earned alien trust, all so that when the time came, humanity would know exactly where to strike. The battle for Karthak lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the hegemony's most powerful military world had been completely neutralized without a single civilian casualty. The message was clear. Humanity could destroy their enemies with surgical precision, and they chose to show mercy to the innocent. But Karthak was just the beginning. Across hegemony space, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. The Shadow Fleet appeared without warning, delivered ultimatums, and then systematically dismantled military targets with impossible accuracy. Hegemony commanders who had terrorized the galaxy for centuries found themselves helpless against an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. On Centauri Prime, High Counselor Vrexthol received reports that filled him with a fear he had not felt in centuries. World after world was falling to human forces. Ships that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were being destroyed by weapons that shouldn't exist. "How many ships do the humans have?" he asked his military advisor. "We don't know, sir. They appear and disappear like phantoms. Our best estimate is that they have at least 300 vessels, all using technology we've never seen before." Vrexthol's compound eyes reflected the fear that was growing in his mind. 300 ships with impossible technology, wielded by a species that the Council had dismissed as primitive children. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "there's something else. We're getting reports from our intelligence networks. Many of our agents have gone silent. Others are sending information that our enemies seem to know before we do." The horrible truth was beginning to dawn on Vrexthol. For 15 years, while the Galactic Council thought they were teaching humanity to be civilized, the humans had been learning something else entirely. They had been learning how to win. 6 days after the first attack on Karthak, the hegemony's military power lay in ruins. Ships that had conquered 1,000 worlds were now drifting hulks in space. Bases that had stood for centuries were nothing but craters in the ground. But for the Galactic Council, the real terror was just beginning. The emergency session was called on Centauri Prime, but this time the Great Crystal Hall felt different. Fear hung in the air like a poisonous gas. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their chairs, but many seats were empty. Some species had simply refused to come, afraid that the humans might target the Council itself. At the center of the hall stood Intelligence Officer Maya Rodriguez, a small woman with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. She carried a simple datapad, but the information on it would shake the foundation of galactic civilization. "Honored Council members," Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the massive chamber. "For the past 15 years, you believed that humanity was contained to our small corner of space. You thought we were learning to follow your rules, to accept our place as the newest and weakest member of your community." High Counselor Vrexthol shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His security forces had been destroyed along with the rest of the hegemony military. He felt naked and vulnerable in a way he had never experienced before. "You were wrong," Maya continued, touching her datapad. The giant screen behind her came to life. showing photographs that made the assembled aliens gasp in horror. The first image showed a hegemony intelligence officer named Kethmore, someone Vrexthul knew personally. But in the second image, Kethmore was removing his face, revealing the human features underneath. It was a mask so perfect that even close friends had never suspected the truth. For 15 years, while you believed humanity was safely contained, we were among you, Maya explained. Human agents, genetically modified and surgically altered to pass as your own species, have been observing, learning, and preparing. The revelation hit the council like a physical blow. Every alien in the room suddenly looked at their neighbors with suspicion. How many of the creatures around them were actually humans in disguise? How long had they been watched by their supposed allies? Agent Parker has worked as a financial advisor on the hegemony homeworld for 12 years, Maya said, showing another image of a human removing an alien disguise. Agent Johnson served as a communications officer in your military for 8 years. Agent Brown worked in your intelligence agency for 6 years. With each revelation, the council members became more afraid. Their most secret organizations, their most trusted advisors, their closest friends, any of them could be human spies. Your military networks, your financial systems, your communication grids. Maya continued with the precision of a surgeon cutting into a patient. We have had access to everything. We know your troop movements before your own generals do. We know your economic weaknesses, your political secrets, your personal fears. A representative from the Zephyrian Union, a species that looked like tall blue trees, stood up with branches shaking in terror. This is impossible. Our security systems were designed by the best minds in the galaxy. Maya smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Your security systems were designed to detect infiltration by known alien species. They were never designed to stop humans who spent years learning to think like you, move like you, and be you. She touched her datapad again, and the screen showed financial records, military plans, and personal communications from dozens of species. Information that should have been impossible for outsiders to obtain. Every world that participated in the New Haven massacre has been marked, Maya announced. We know which ships fired the weapons, which officers gave the orders, and which politicians approved the attack. Your military assets are already gone. Your economies are collapsing as we speak, because we know exactly which systems to target to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. Commander Paul Davis stepped forward to join Maya at the center of the hall. He was a big man with scars on his face and hands that spoke of many battles. Your choice now is simple, he said in a voice that filled the chamber. Surrender unconditionally and face justice for your crimes, or we will demonstrate what humanity learned from studying every species in this galaxy. The threat hung in the air like a sword ready to fall. The council members looked around at each other, seeing suspicion and fear in every face. What do you want? Vrexthul asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Justice, Maya replied. Every person responsible for the New Haven massacre will be tried for war crimes. Every species that participated will pay compensation to the families of the victims. And the Galactic Council will be dissolved, replaced by a government that protects the weak instead of letting the strong do whatever they want. A representative from the Corvan Empire, a species that looked like walking crystals, stood up with rage glowing in their core. You cannot simply declare yourselves the rulers of the galaxy. We have governed these stars for millions of years. Paul laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Governed? Is that what you call it when strong species attack weak ones for sport? Is that governance when children are killed to test new weapons? Is that leadership when entire planets are enslaved because they cannot defend themselves? You don't understand, Vrexthul protested. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Order must be maintained. The weak must be controlled or they will cause chaos. The galaxy is dangerous because you made it dangerous, Maya shot back. For millions of years you have ruled through fear and violence. You have convinced yourselves that this is natural, that this is the way things must be. But you're wrong. She gestured to the screen behind her, which now showed images of human space, cities where different species lived together in peace, trade stations where alien children played together without fear, hospitals where human doctors treated patients from a dozen different worlds. This is what governance looks like, Maya said. This is what happens when the strong protect the weak instead of preying on them. In human space, species work together because they choose to, not because they're afraid of being destroyed if they don't. Impossible, muttered the Corvan representative. Different species cannot coexist without conflict. It goes against nature. No, Paul replied. Conflict without purpose goes against nature. Competition for resources, that's natural. Fighting to protect your family, that's natural. But killing children to prove how strong you are? That's not nature. That's evil. The word hung in the air like a curse. Evil. It was a concept that many of the alien species had forgotten, if they had ever understood it at all. They had become so used to using violence to solve problems that they had stopped thinking about whether their actions were right or wrong. The human species has made its own share of mistakes, Maya admitted. We have fought wars, committed atrocities, and caused suffering. But we learned from our mistakes. We grew beyond them. You have had millions of years to grow beyond yours, but instead you made them into laws. She walked closer to Vrexthol's chair, looking up at the massive insect creature with eyes that held no fear. Do you know what humanity's greatest weapon is, Counselor? It's not our ships or our technology, though both are impressive. Our greatest weapon is that we learned from you. What do you mean? Every species in this council taught us something through your histories, your cultures, your mistakes. We studied how you rose to power and how others fell. We learned from your victories and your defeats. We absorbed it all and became something new. Paul nodded in agreement. You see, counselors, you made one fundamental error. You assumed that because we were young, we were weak. You confused inexperience with inability. You thought that a species that had only been in space for a few centuries couldn't possibly challenge civilizations that had existed for millions of years. But you forgot something important, Maya added. Being young means we don't carry the weight of old assumptions. We can see solutions that you would never consider, because you've been doing things the same way for so long that you've forgotten there might be other ways. When you attacked New Haven, you didn't just murder our children. Paul continued, his voice growing harder with each word. You awakened something that had been sleeping in humanity's heart since our ancestors first looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. What did we awaken? Vrexthol asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Maya smiled again, and this time there was something terrifying in her expression. You awakened the part of humanity that built cities in impossible places, that crossed oceans in wooden boats, that split the atom and walked on the moon. You awakened the part of us that refuses to accept that something cannot be done just because it has never been done before. What happens now? Asked the Zephyrian representative. Paul looked around the chamber at all the frightened alien faces. Now? Now you learn what it means to live in a galaxy where the strong protect the weak instead of destroying them. Some of you will adapt to this new reality. Others will resist and be removed. This is not over, Vrexthol said, but his voice lacked conviction. Maya nodded. You're right. This is just the beginning. Earth's wrath darkened your skies, Counselor. Now our mercy will light them again, for those who deserve it. 3 months after the Galactic Council's surrender, the universe had learned what it meant to have humans in charge. The great crystal chambers on Centauri Prime looked the same, but everything else had changed completely. Where once the Council had ruled through fear, now the Terran Federation governed through strength tempered with mercy. Ambassador Carol Turner stood at the center of the hall where Jake Morrison had delivered his ultimatum months before. She was a tall woman with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much suffering. Behind her, the massive screen no longer showed images of destruction but pictures of construction. New hospitals, schools, and trade stations were being built across the galaxy. The Terran Federation hereby establishes the final terms of the new galactic government, Carol announced to the assembled representatives. Many of the alien faces before her still showed shock at how completely their world had changed. Some looked angry, others afraid, but a growing number looked hopeful for the first time in centuries. All species that participated in genocide against human colonies will submit to war crimes tribunals, she continued. But these trials will be fair, with judges from multiple species and the right to defense counsel. We will not repeat your mistakes by making justice into revenge. High Counselor Vrexthol sat in a smaller chair now, no longer the ruler of anything. His compound eyes had lost their arrogant shine, replaced by the dull look of someone who had seen their entire worldview crumble. Beside him sat his new human advisor, Agent Kelly Martinez, who had spent 8 years disguised as his personal secretary. Military aggression against any species, not just humanity, will be met with immediate intervention by Federation forces. Carol continued. The days when the strong could prey on the weak are over. Every world, no matter how small or defenseless, will be protected. A representative from the Vegan Confederacy, a species that looked like walking plants with flower-like faces, stood up slowly. Ambassador Turner, what about our traditional conflicts? Some of our species have been at war for thousands of years. These are matters of honor and ancient grudges. Carol's expression softened slightly. Commander Blake, would you answer that question? Tony Blake stepped forward, his military bearing commanding respect even from aliens who had never seen a human before this year. Wars for resources that we understand. Conflicts over territory or trade rights, those can be negotiated. But wars where you kill civilians to hurt your enemies, wars where you destroy planets because you can, those end now. What gives you the right? Demanded a representative from the Corvan Empire, their crystal body flickering with angry red light. You have been a spacefaring species for less than 200 years. We have ruled the stars since before your son was born. Carol walked closer to the Corvan representative, looking up at the tall crystal being without fear. The right of the strong to protect the weak. The right of the prepared to stop the careless. The right of those who learned from history to prevent its worst mistakes from being repeated. She gestured to the screen behind her, which now showed before and after images from across the galaxy. Worlds that had been battlefields were now peaceful trading centers. Species that had been enslaved were now free. Children who would have died in pointless wars were playing together in integrated schools. In 3 months, we have ended 47 ongoing conflicts, freed 6 enslaved species, and stopped 3 genocide attempts, Carol continued, not through conquest but through strength used wisely. Not through fear, but through the promise of protection for those who cannot protect themselves. The transformation had been incredible to watch. Human ships patrolled the major trade routes now, their black hulls serving as a reminder that the galaxy had new guardians. But unlike the old Council forces, these ships actually responded to distress calls, actually protected merchant vessels, actually kept their promises to defend the weak. Dr. Helen Carter, the Federation's new Director of Interspecies Relations, joined Carol at the center of the hall. She was a small woman with a big voice, someone who had spent years studying alien cultures and languages. The Federation offers membership to any species willing to follow 3 simple rules, she announced. First, no species may attack another without provocation. Second, all conflicts must be resolved through negotiation before violence is considered. Third, the rights of individuals, regardless of species, must be respected and protected. What about our traditional ways? Asked a representative from the hegemony remnants, a species that had built their entire culture around military conquest. Some of us have been warriors for millions of years. You ask us to abandon everything we are. Tony stepped forward again. Being a warrior is not about attacking the weak. Being a warrior is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Your species has produced some of the finest fighters in the galaxy, but you've been pointing your weapons in the wrong direction. He touched a control on his belt, and the screen showed images of former hegemony soldiers working alongside human marines to rescue civilians from a natural disaster on a distant world. These warriors found a better way to prove their strength. Instead of conquering the helpless, they're saving them. The change in the galaxy's military structure had been the most dramatic transformation of all. The Federation had offered a choice to every military officer and soldier in the former Council forces. Join the new Galactic Defense Force and swear to protect all species equally, or face trial for their past crimes. Surprisingly, many had chosen to join. Soldiers who had spent their careers following orders to attack civilians discovered that they preferred orders to defend them. Officers who had been taught that might made right learned that true strength came from protecting the weak. Admiral Lisa Hart appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from her flagship in orbit around Earth. Behind her, the blue and green planet that had spawned humanity rotated slowly in space, a reminder that even the mightiest civilizations had started somewhere small. The Galactic Defense Force now includes members from 87 different species, Lisa announced. They work together, train together, and fight together to keep the peace. What was once impossible has become routine. Carol turned back to the assembled representatives. The Federation is not an empire. We don't want to rule over you or control your daily lives. We want to create a galaxy where every species can grow and prosper without fear of being destroyed by their neighbors. What about punishment for our past crimes? Asked Vrexthul, Speaking for the first time in the session, his voice was quiet and sad, the voice of someone who had finally understood the weight of his actions. "Justice, not revenge," Carol replied. "Those responsible for genocide and war crimes will face trial, but punishment will be proportional to the crime, and rehabilitation will be offered to those willing to change." The war crimes trials had been unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the victor's justice that usually followed conflicts, the Federation had established fair courts with judges from multiple species, including some from the former council powers. The trials were public, the evidence was presented openly, and the defendants had the right to legal representation. Many of the worst war criminals had been sentenced to long prison terms, but others who showed genuine remorse had been given opportunities to make amends through community service and education programs. Some former hegemony officers now worked in refugee camps helping the very people they had once oppressed. "What happens to species that refuse to join the Federation?" asked the plant-like vegan representative. Dr. Carter smiled gently. "Nothing as long as they don't attack others. The Federation believes in freedom of choice. If you want to live by your old ways within your own territory, that's your right. But if you use those old ways to hurt others, then we'll step in." Several species had indeed chosen to remain independent, retreating to their home systems and avoiding contact with the wider galaxy. The Federation respected their choice but kept careful watch to ensure they didn't resume their old patterns of aggression. "I have a question," said a new voice from the back of the chamber. It belonged to Ambassador Lisa Kim from the Centauri Republic, a small species that had been bullied by larger neighbors for centuries. "Why should we trust you? How do we know that humans won't become like the old council once you have all the power?" It was the question many species had been afraid to ask. History was full of liberators who became oppressors, heroes who became villains once they gained power. Carol considered the question carefully before answering. "You don't know. You can't know. Trust must be earned through actions, not words. But I can tell you this. We've designed the Federation specifically to prevent that kind of corruption." She touched her control device, and the screen showed the Federation's governmental structure. Unlike the old council, which concentrated power in the hands of a few species, the Federation distributed authority across multiple branches and included representatives from every member species. "No single species controls the Federation, not even humanity," Carol explained. "Major decisions require consensus from multiple species. Military commands are shared between different cultures. Even I can be voted out of office if the member species lose confidence in my leadership."